button just now, right there.
The stream is live.
There it goes. Okay, you were frozen there for a second.
I think that always happens when you go live or something. It always freezes for a moment.
Yep. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live stream. I'm here with Dr. Melanie Uhde. Did I do it?
Yeah,
Good. Okay, good. And I've been looking forward to talking with you. I met you in July, and so this started back in July, and now here we are, day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday.
Black Friday.
Yeah, lots of deals out there. Oh, and I'll mention, since we're talking about Black Friday, if you guys have not gotten your ticket to the IACP conference in Newport Beach, California, they are running a Black Friday sale. It will be the last sale that they have. And there is a science summit on the day before the conference. So make sure you get the ticket for that. And why should they get the ticket to the science summit?
Because I will be there.
That's right. You'll be speaking at the Science Summit this year, or excuse me, next year. And do you know what you're going to be speaking about?
I do not know yet. Honestly, I've been asked like half a year ago, like a week or 2 weeks after last conference, I've been asked to send the summary of what I'm going to talk about the next year. I'm like, it's a year out. I don't know yet. I haven't gotten like my creativity, inspirational moments yet, but it will be something of relevance, most likely stress and resilience related, and something good.
Well, and I think that the way information moves now, and just the way that our world is working now, like it's who knows what we'll be speaking about this time or next year, next summer, or this time next year. And I will put up a link, you guys. I'm looking that up right now, and going to put that in the comments down below. And then I'm going to share this on my personal page. And while I do that, do you want to give people just a quick introduction about who you are and where you're from and what you do, Melanie?
Yeah, sure. Do I see? Oh, here we go.
Yeah, you can share it as well, so we can get your audience there and some of the lovers and some of the haters to join us.
I was hoping that everyone can go, because then I would have to log in, I think, to stream on my side too. But anyways, I just want to see if I can see comments here and see who's in the chat, because it doesn't tell me anywhere, right? How many people are in here?
I think so. We got 4 people now, and people start trickling in
sure.
As we go. And everybody who's watching this, share it as well, so we can get as many people as possible. And we already have people commenting. If the comment, do you see the comment section to the? Okay.
I do.
Cool.
I just saw the big hello by Megan.
Hey, Megan.
Okay, so who am I? What do I do? Turns out to be a very that by itself turns out to be a very controversial question, in terms of like why I do what I do, where I'm coming from. So, in short, all the stuff I do is educational, and yes, it's rooted in my own experience with dog training and basically going backwards. Over the last 3-4 years, I have put out a lot of educational content on the neurobiology of dog behavior, which is rooted a lot in my experience with my own 3 dogs. And before I started to be more public, if you will, on social media, when I started my canine decoded business, it was a pet dog training business. So I went to people and trained their pet dogs, and then started to put pieces more together, and it turned into what it is now. But that's technically not how it really started. Before that, or like a few years before that, I did have always like my degree, my master's is in biology, and I started going to I should probably turn this off. I started getting into biology because I always wanted to do anything with animals. Back then, I had no idea that I'm going to end up doing something with dogs. I thought I'm a cat person. Turns out I'm not. Or I'm both. I like cats too. But like my educational background is very much research, academia, in terms of the gut-brain axis with my latest research at Columbia University when I moved from Germany to the US. And before that, I did my PhD at the Institute for Tropical Medicine, where I looked at behavioral and immunological changes in response to diseases in animal models. And before that, I was the bachelor and the master's in biology, where, as you can imagine, you cover a lot of fields that I wouldn't say like I remember every single thing. There's like, what is it, 15 years ago, that I remember everything that I learned when I went to school in terms of like biology. But it laid the foundation of how to think about certain subjects more critically or in the bigger picture, because it's not just behavior, it's not just hormones, it's not just genetics. And having an understanding of all these fields kind of helps now understanding polling newest research, in particular being able to publish or having published a bunch of papers. I understand how experiments are being set up, how to, see what hypotheses are being tested, whether or not the discussions, for example, align with the actual experimental setup, where the flaws are, and where we kind of get carried away when we talk about interpreting the results of certain studies. And then, obviously all of that wouldn't matter if I didn't have hands-on experience. I think a lot of the aha moments came in and are still coming in as I'm working through the challenges with my own dogs, which, is probably the more important part, because you can have so much textbook knowledge and still don't understand how it looks like when you have to put it into practice.
Yes, so true. I had an aha moment when I was, I really started on the purely positive, force-free, and then I was looking at my dog, and I just remember having this moment of like, wait a second, this should be working. Why isn't this working? Like, this is not, and that's where I realized that, man, I need to do a lot more learning, and I need to find people that this does work with and see what they're doing. And so I understand exactly what you're saying. And there's so many ways that we can go with this, but there's an aspect of this where we are in the emotional arena with dogs and with cats. And I don't understand cats one bit. Just so you know, I have a couple of cats, and I just look at them, and I'm just like, what the heck is going on? The only thing I know about cats is they're one of the most successful predatory land animals, right?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And the speed and the way that they think is pretty remarkable. And because we're in the emotional arena as human beings, and because we have this prefrontal cortex, the new cortex that these animals don't have, the only thing that I can really think of is that we try to think with our emotions. And because we are in the emotional space of loving these dogs, that we want to do the best for them, but in doing so, we don't see the true picture. You're smiling. What does this make sense to you?
It does. And I think the flaw is more like the extreme that we are taking it to, because there are obviously a lot of upsides for being emotional. That probably the combination of being empathetic yet intelligent in terms of our brain size and whatnot kind of, does support evolution, putting evolution in the direction where we are now, and potentially who knows how we're going to be like in I don't know, 500 years. But we are, and I would say the sprinkled in the way, like you said at the beginning, how information travels through social media. I think a lot of the dangerous part is that a lot of nuances get lost, and we are kind of left with this raw emotion that is being weaponized to trigger all the things that we hate, right? Everything that we try to avoid, which is extreme stress and trauma and fear and pain, and it has gotten to the point where we remove these elements as if they should never exist in life, in nature. For us, for our dogs that we share intimate life with, And I think that's the dangerous part, because we now kind of move away from accepting the dogs for who they are, or like even other animals that we interact with, that we depriving them of something that has allowed them to thrive in whatever niche or environment they're in. And now saying, as a superior species, there's no place for pain, there's no place for fear, there's no place for stress and discomfort, because we don't want it for ourselves either. And yet there is no one single example where this has ever been either successful or just feasible in like whatever form or shape you want to think about it. So we are left fighting something that is impossible, right? It's like, I don't know why we even think about these kind of things, to remove them and call everyone an abuser, or call everyone who does use different aversive control and training as someone who harms dogs and their welfare, when there is like no evidence for this whatsoever. But at the same time, more importantly, it distracts from the actual application, the nuanced application of this, right? Because now no one has time, given that we're used to these social media fights, to really think about, okay, what does actually the proper application mean, right? And those who do know, they're like tired of joining these conversations, which I understand, but then they get quieter and these extreme voices get louder, and we are now in this yeah, like you said, in this weird situation where we turn dogs into something that they're not.
Yeah, well, and not have an objective view of that which is occurring in front of our eyes. And I've had, as a pet dog trainer, it's blown my mind how I've told somebody something that's happening right in front of them and they can't see that, or they mislabel it. And that's why I say that I think that people try to think with their emotions, and you can't think with your emotions. And it makes sense, because it does not feel good to have aversive. It doesn't feel good to be stressed out. It doesn't feel good to see a dog that's struggling, or a person that's struggling. But that's where the strength lies, within that struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the lessons lie, within that struggle.
Yes.
And I think that it's also a misnomer that we, who understand the importance of allowing a dog to gain strength through frustration, through stress, through using aversives, that that we're just bad people, and that we enjoy seeing that, where it's like, no, that's not the case. We just understand the importance of why this needs to happen. There's no way around, over, or under. We need to go through this, and the dog does too. And once we get to the other side, we bridge that gap of understanding, and that's where the true learning happens. Yeah, and I think that it's unobtainable. I mean, it's unobtainable to live a stress-free life, and it's just not true. And it just perplexes me. You know that there's a saying of there's, and I remember, and I don't want to get into like politics or anything like that, but there is like this contagion that has been spoken about in political arenas called the woke mind virus. Have you ever heard that term?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's almost like a mind virus within our industry as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's the contagion of, I don't know how to explain it, but it is perplexing, and dogs pay for it with their lives. And not only that, but just like you posted earlier, I have never received death threats in my life until 2010, when I was launching a project called Dog Coach Magazine, and I joined IACP, and I got some messages from people that claim to be purely positive, and they wish death upon me.
Damn.
Yeah, and I was like, man, this is not purely positive.
No.
Like, and I like your post. I saw it once you messaged me about getting caught up in the social media, about how some people, it's a contradiction, right? Because they're like, I love dogs. I hate humans. I just don't know what to do with this. It's just so perplexing to me.
I think there is something to be said about I have to be careful how the phrase is, but because I'm thinking about this a lot, because again, like I couldn't help it but keep commenting on comments yesterday. And I don't know, maybe I was bored and it was Thanksgiving and it was just, didn't want to move and got off the couch and just on my phone, because usually I don't do it that much, right? But once I started, I couldn't stop. And then I was talking to my husband. It's like, why is it like it's like a field study? Why is it that people continue to go back and forth, and it's like both sides, or it's just like in general, people over and over and over and over the same things? And you can look at my comments and look in anyone else's comment section. It's always kind of like the same broader topics of conversations. We always talk about the same thing. Everyone kind of throws in some analogies that then are being dismissed by the others. And then it's like, why wouldn't I use it if I can do it without? And then others, look, you just don't know how to use it. It's all like the same things. And then now here I come and kind of say it in different ways, but I also kind of say the same thing. And there's something addicting about it. Otherwise, why wouldn't people stop, right? Usually you would think, well, that's annoying and frustrating, so I kind of avoid that kind of confrontation. And there is this I think there's like something about all humans just wanting to be right, like survival instinct wise, right? It's good to be right because then you're on the safe side of survival, more or less. So you fight for being right because obviously it feels good. But then those who go beyond any rational logic or whatever must have some more intense needs to be fulfilled in order to be right. And again, that can happen on both sides, right? You see on both sides these extreme attacking comments that, some really deep insecurity needs to be met as fast as possible, which you usually can do pretty quickly on social media if you have a certain following. And that part itself is kind of like, okay, now we're dragging the welfare of dogs into like a situation where people are so insecure that they are craving some sort of validation in one way or another. And ultimately it becomes less and less about dogs, right? It becomes less about the dog in front of you. Or like if you even train dogs, that's questionable at times. And becomes more about your own kind of like, again, insecurities, what you need to feel better about yourself. And you see this more so in people that then go out and it's like talking about dogs that have been abused, and talking about dogs that like, they see the e-collar and they pee their pants, and like coming up with these extreme examples that exist less often than it is being portrayed on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Coming in as a savior and a hero, saying, I use my whatever technique to change that dog's life. And again, that can go from both sides, right? I got this dog that is super anxious and was on rewards only. And then I showed some structure with the e-collar. Now the dog is thriving, and kind of getting these extreme cases. And that becomes almost the normal of conversations. That this is not, most dogs are more resilient than we think. Most dogs are not traumatized, even if you misuse the tool because you're early in your understanding of it. And most dogs can also live an okay life with rewards. It becomes a matter of, do we need to take it off the table? We don't know until we understand how the dog is living in this chaotic situation or whatnot, right?
Yes.
And the middle ground is like so much more interesting, I think, because the nuance there is like, okay, how do we introduce it then if we need it later? How do we educate if there is some misunderstanding how to use it? And that's where welfare lies. But it's portrayed as like these extremes, which I think it's really just about the people then who are arguing. And again, I'm like, yesterday I was fully in it, and I'm probably today, so it's like I'm not blaming anyone that everyone is a bad person doing that, because it's just the society we live in.
Well, we're passionate about this. We've traded our lives to work with dogs and be
Right.
advocates for them. And if you guys, I'll get to your comments too, but I have one here that you said savior complex, and James Cohen says anthropomorphism combined with a savior complex, and I agree.
Mhm.
I agree. The anthropomorphification, and I get why people anthropomorphize or overlay human characteristics upon another being, because that's how we understand the world and that's how we perceive. And it makes it easier for us to understand something if we overlay our own perception upon that being. It's just that we have to remind ourselves that this isn't a human being. This isn't you. And we all excuse me, we all have wants and desires, including the sentient being that is a dog, a cat, a fish, or whatever it is. That's just as important to that individual as your wants and desires are to you. But we need to have the realization that it might be vastly different from your wants and desires. Even another person has wants and desires that might be totally different than mine. And so that's important. And the other thing is to understand, like, it's easy to fool somebody, but it's not easy to make somebody understand that they've been fooled or that
Mhm.
they're wrong. And that's one of the most powerful things that we can say as an individual is 3 words: I was wrong. And go back and be open to changing based on new information, changing our mind. And with when we do have an hypothesis, when we look at the scientific method, the first thing that we do is observation,
Mhm.
right? We have the hypothesis, which we determine an idea of, like, okay, this is the outcome that I think will happen when we start to apply this experiment. And let's talk about experiments for a second, because you said this earlier about how these experiments are staged to have an outcome that aligns with your hypothesis. I don't know. Like, there's a lot of these experiments that aren't true in the real world. Can you dive deeper into that, Doc?
Yes. So an experiment, like we have to understand, like, coming from the hypothesis, what are we trying to do here with an experiment, right? There are like ways where we can gauge, and I'm gonna define experiment very broadly. There are ways you can gauge, okay, what is the current knowledge understanding in the public? So we might want to set up an experiment which is surveys. We survey the public. There are experiments where we might want to actually understand the mechanism underlying certain processes, fear, for example, right? So there we have to have a really controlled setup in a laboratory setup with like animal models that are similar to each other, so you don't conflate your initial understanding of the mechanisms underlying with like variety of temperament or whatever, right? So you kind of pick what you need in order to answer a certain question. And the biggest question always will be correlation versus causation. And getting to a causation is actually really, really hard,
Mm-hmm.
especially if we talk about individuals or creatures or animals or living beings that have shown to have a variety of like temperament, personalities, all these things matter, genetic influences of behaviors. It's really hard to come to causation. So many factors in there. That's the biggest thing why it's so hard to come to clear causation, even like in human nutrition or any kind of nutrition, right? Super difficult. So you have to have such a controlled setup and experiments to kind of get down to the mechanisms, and then you test as a next step what influences the outcomes of those mechanisms. Now you can actually influence them more specifically, but there you still kind of need high technology, which is unlikely to happen in dogs. And someone asked, like, okay, what's the best setup to understand the impact of tools on dog welfare or whatever? And I really don't think we need any studies. I really don't think there is any way we could set it up that would not lead to another war over, but didn't do that and didn't do this, and this wasn't acknowledged, and this wasn't accounted for, which is true. The only way to do that we would have to recruit, and even then I want to get into this. So I don't really think that it's possible, but I really don't think we need it. I think we have enough studies in animal models that tell us how stress works. We have enough case studies of trainers who have seen dogs that suffered from the use of tools, dogs that thrive by the use of tools, dogs that didn't need tools. So like all of that kind of just says it's not about the tool, it's about how you train and what you do with that tool. And then just combining that into an agreement that it is like comes down to the skill and the understanding of what method you use in terms of like how the learning process really works, that can really enhance the welfare of a dog. We just won't want to agree on these things, but there's no lack of, I don't want to say evidence, but there's no lack of data that would tell us the whole story. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I saw a post about a fMRI, right? And even sometimes the data, I think, can muddy the waters. I think that that too much data can sometimes be a bad thing, and we get caught up in the data instead of the actual real world experience. And we also have to realize that this is an acoustic chamber of the science lab, where we don't have the infinite stimuli that's available in the real world. And the more that we know about, especially what you discuss about the gut brain axis, right, and how that influences, and anxiety disorders, right? Like, and I have a question here. I have all these questions that I came up with for you. Where when you see, you've studied anxiety disorders at Stanford, when we see that a dog shuts down, or explosively reactive dog, and then how often is that actually a medical or neurological issue masquerading as a training problem, where it's like, this is something that is baked into this dog, and some things we can train, and some things we have to essentially manage.
Yeah, that's a good question. I tend to make a differentiation between a dog that is just not just, but is neurotic, unsettled. I think most high drive, high arousal dog owners, have seen this plenty, which is very dependent on, they just they're very, very environmental. So they get stimulated easily by the environment. And they just also tend to want to do things. So that these are, like, to me, these are neurotic, high arousal dogs versus those that are actually anxious. And I think there's a slight difference where, these highly neurotic dogs, they're there for a reason. Like even border collies, to a certain extent, often I think they are like too much for me, too neurotic, like on fire, but they were bred to be like that. They have to be able to respond to the smallest change in their environment to ultimately do their job as like herding livestock, for example. And then putting a dog, for example, like that on drugs is like, you're more likely doing something that harms this dog further than enhancing the welfare, just because this dog is neurotic. Maybe it's not really anxious. But then there are like all these other dogs that's supposed to have a good temperament, or like, a pet dog that should, maybe not a working dog, but kind of like freaks out on walks, can't settle at home, separation anxiety to the roof, demand barking all the time, never stop puppy biting, whatever it is, all these things, that then they're kind of laughed off at the beginning, turned into some really like manifested anxiety behaviors.
Yes, that has become progressive.
Yeah.
Right. It started out as subtle and then becomes progressive.
Yeah. And not to say that these dogs need medication, but their training really influences. Training has been missing, a certain way of training has been missing, but then training can really influence the ongoing behavior, which versus especially like my one of my males, Anya, like no matter how much training I do, no matter how much I do structured settling down on the place bed or like heel work or tire her out, she's always going to be like that. And
Yes.
that requires me to know what I can take her and where I cannot take her. Because there is a chance to make it worse, right? To turn that into something, maybe not anxiety, but like reactivity or aggression. But it like in her best state, she's neurotic, right? And I have to accept that for who she is.
And I think it's important for the general public to know. And honestly, this is why I love going in and actually visiting other dog trainers, right? I just recently went down and saw Omar Van Mueller and Ivan Balbanoff, and to see some of the dogs that they have, and to realize, like, look, just because we're dog trainers, it's not like a magic wand that we have that just like it's like Mecca or like for like it's not just a perfect world. Like we as professionals experience the same issues that our clients experience sometimes, and we have a toolbox or knowledge base that we can be an advocate. We can set up structure, boundaries, rules, and that make that existence much more palatable for us and for that dog, hopefully, right? And but it's still, we still experience the same issues of reactivity, of high drive, high arousal dogs, and and I think also with social media and the curated content, that a lot of people don't see the shit show that might be behind the scenes, even for your favorite professionals, right?
Yes, I wish we could be more. I think a lot of people, they are transparent about it. But it's like risky to show it because you get shredded and you get torn apart on social media. It's like, who you call yourself a professional and all that. It doesn't mean that you can't have a difficult dog that challenges you. I said in one of my posts, like, working with pet dogs was a very different experience for me than having my first working dog. And that made me question, like, do I even know how to train a dog at all? And then you seek help. And that's, I think, the part that like is important, like, how do you deal with that, right? Like for me, it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to listen to more people. And then eventually you might find someone that aligns completely and gives you a really strong foundation for your knowledge, and you stick to that, and it becomes your mentor or whatever, and then you branch out again. But that was like Jesus Christ, like particularly when I had my first Mal, when I got her, because she was like not genetically sound to do all the working sports stuff, but she still was a Mal or is a Mal. So now here I'm trapped between this. I can't give you an outlet in the bite work because you're not even going to make it on the training field without blowing up, reacting, and getting all the anxiety and neurotic anxiety attacks. But at the same time, you're still not just happy being on the couch. So you kind of get really creative with what you do with a dog like that. And the pet dog world, the pet dog training I've done up until then was a little bit of help, but not that much. So I needed more insights into how a working dog brain works, right? And then I get Ollie, which is like a completely different temperament, genetically really sound, and then incredibly powerful and talented, where I'm like, okay, now I have to actually also train all this like sophisticated obedience because we're going to compete. And now the whole thing is like, do I even know how to train a freaking sit? Like this dog is like crooked and like doing all kinds of things, and it's like obviously not as bad as I just mentioned it, but like it makes you question. It's like, okay, I never paid attention to that kind of nuance because I didn't have to before. Now, how do I deal with that? And like, I had training sessions that looked horrible. I had training sessions that are like, oh, this looks great. And yes, a summary makes it on my social media, right? It doesn't mean that it's not messy at times, or that I'm not frustrated, or that like I work with a trainer like Jessie, who has trained many Malinois and has her own 4 Malinois and competes with almost all of them. I hire her as my trainer to help me train this, right? And I'm like, this is the best thing I've ever done for Ollie because I don't know, and I need that. It doesn't mean that I don't sit after and it's like, okay, well, how does the brain work? And with this and this and this, and come up with my own little nuances and things that that makes me a trainer that I am. But it's it's a dirty road. That's it. to get.
Dirty world. I love it. Right. And even talking with Ivan, he's like, dude, sometimes out in my field when I let my dog just go, and we talked about this on the podcast that we did, which I hope he launches here pretty soon. He's like, he does the same. He says the same thing, man. Some people would look at me not as a world champion, but as somebody that needs a dog trainer. And I was just like, thank you so much. And I think that this is why I do these live streams, you guys, is because we have people that are passionate about dogs. We have lots of professionals that watch these, and you're not alone, right? We all have challenges, and that's why it's important. And honestly, that's why I love going to these ICP events, conferences that don't have an agenda, that are going to ostracize you, that are actually some place that you can have conversations and meet and network with people that can benefit your life and knowledge base with the dogs. Have you ever been to IACP conference before July?
No, I have not. No.
What did you think about that? What did you think about that event?
Well, I was pleasantly surprised, and it was a very heartwarming welcome to now coming there as like the first time, but also as a speaker. And the excitement around learning more was kind of very refreshing. Like, obviously, if you're like around, if you hang out too much on social media, it feels like no one wants to learn anything new. No one wants to, or like everyone just wants to argue their standpoint, right? But then that wasn't the case, right? Like that wasn't the case there. There was a lot of like, I want to learn more about these things, and this is really intriguing and interesting. Now, I have not been like I don't know the vibe of like a Force for Your Rewards only conference, but because you kind of like in your clan, I would assume it feels the same. It's like we're welcoming and we are all like helping the welfare of the dogs, right? But I do find that there's something to be said about, like, let's say this. I think the balance trainers, skilled balance trainers, are the only ones who can effectively call out abuse on dogs with tools, because they have the knowledge of understanding, okay, this is just a different way of training versus this is actual abuse. Absolutely. No one else I find is qualified for it. No one who has read textbook knowledge around aversives, no one who is never trained with an e-collar, whether you decided this for you or not doesn't actually matter. And no one who says everything that is a tool is abuse. The only people who can call out abuse effectively are those who keep learning and who understand how the proper uses and have experience and maybe have messed up along the way and have figured out a better way. And I think 99%, probably 98%, I don't know, there are always some exceptions. That's the people that were at the conference that are going to be the most powerful people that can call out abuse. If given, that's basically what my agenda is if given the language and the permission to be more offensive and not just defensive about their use of tools. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, will ultimately carry the field forward in the context of welfare.
Yes, there is a way to misuse these tools. But with that saying, there's a baked-in assumption that there is a way to properly use these tools as well. And I'm saying that, yeah, absolutely, there is a way to destroy a dog. There is a way to misuse these tools. There's, and there's people out there that we have to understand. There's asocial types of people that don't care, and one thing that they don't want is to be found out. And so it's a good thing to call it out when you see it, but it's a bad thing when you don't know what you're talking about and you call out people that you don't understand the context or what's happening, and somebody's vulnerable enough to show the messy middle that looks like shit. And but it's a part of that growth that I was talking about earlier, about the struggle through frustration and that particular animal. And when you have people that have demonstrated that they have experienced and gotten through that. That's why it's important to go to these events. That's why it's important to meet people, shake hands. I'm a big believer that even though we're on social media and we talk to each other and whatnot, that there is a degree of, I call it psychic energy, I guess, what is communicated when you actually can get in the same room with somebody, touch them, like shake their hand or hug them. Don't just go for touch people, but
Gets
but
you
there's
into trouble nowadays.
yeah, totally. But that's important, you guys. Meet other people and be vulnerable. Like go to a different spot and share your knowledge. We all have something to learn from each other, but we all have something to teach each other as well. And we can only do that by experiencing that and getting together. And so that's why I love these events. So and then we have comments piling up. So I want to get to some of these comments. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Thanks for coming here.
Oh, we have New Zealand in the house. Tosh from New Zealand. Hey, you guys, let me know where you're watching this from in the comments down below too. I think it's so cool that we go around the world, and even talking to Melanie. Oh, thank you, baby. I got some coffee being delivered by my beautiful wife. Thank you, darling. We have and even you from across the pond in Germany, growing up there, and enjoy watching dogs succeed in challenges and become stronger and more confident. Amen. That's why we do this, folks. There's the currency that pays our bills. There's a currency which I have to write down, comfort crisis. There's the experience that pays our mind. There's experience that pays our body, right? But there's the experience that pays our heart. And that's the joy of watching a dog succeed in challenges and become stronger and more confident. Thank you, Julie. Jeff Kelman calls it the messy middle when the dog is going through motions of over. Yep, absolutely. It is a messy middle. Sup, gangstas. No dog trainers should be treat others. Threatening to kill isn't very purely positive behavior, to be fair enough. I started to go down the road of loving dogs and hating people as well. Yep. You have to love people too, man. What is something that you say to, have you ever heard this, Melanie, where somebody says, I work with dogs because I hate people?
Yeah, of course. Like, yeah, I mean, I probably have said it myself. I guess there's truth to it, right? You kind of have, if you just work with dogs, like if you really just do your own thing, and I think they used to be a lot more so than it is now. And now you kind of, even if you just work with dogs and you show your work, you're being confronted by what other people think very easily. But I think the more you kind of have to deal with things that affect your work, the less you want to do a particular thing. Like how many people say, I'd rather have board and trains than actually one-on-one sessions with people, because there are like all kinds of challenges that prevent you from actually progressing. I don't blame anyone who thinks that way. It's just inevitable no matter what, right?
Yeah, well, and you don't. What I tell people is like, I've never had a dog hand me a credit card, right? The
Right.
people are the ones that are going to take this and carry the torch forward, but also they're the ones that pay us. So we have to have some type of people skills to appeal, and not only that, but to communicate the teachings that they can carry this forward, and so we don't get back into the same situation that they were in. Unfortunately, the internet exposes normal people to be too many stupid people, gives stupid, gullible people an easy way to collaborate on stupid. Okay. Force-free movement attracts certain individuals who really don't care about the welfare of dogs at all. Dogs are just a framing device to feel morally superior. The everything is abused crowd, unfortunately.
Yeah, these are the extremes, right? I mean, they're like obviously force-free trainers who found their niche and they're not doing bad work, and they're most likely also not participating in this everything is abuse narrative. But it's an easy It's exactly what Jessica said. It's an easy way in for people who kind of, need to get some needs met. And the morally, like the whole, a lot of like people in the shelter community, right? They're kind of like very vocal about all of these things that ultimately, if you really want to then look at this deeper, it will impact their welfare in a negative way, whatever they're trying to promote. It just doesn't sound as good, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. I mean, there's different people, man. I am currently building my dog training business. Any tips how to build it well, how to advertise, etc.? I mean, my big tip is be your authentic self, and there is no finish line to stop. You never stop learning. And attracting clients and all this stuff is, I mean, I think I've done some business talks. Sherry Boyer. Do you have any quick tips for Kathy?
How to build a dog training business. I think you should get comfortable early on to put your work out there, and like Bill said, like be transparent about what you do, and train dogs as many as you can, until you figure out maybe what your need is, whether you want to do board and train in person, sports, agility, all kinds of things that you can do with dogs and dog training. But like, don't say no to anything, and like do your best and be transparent and put yourself out there and find your supporters.
Well, the only thing that I would is like just don't work with dogs that are above your ability too. That there's some dogs that we do need to say no to, but that's when we seek out mentors, and that's when we find. And one thing I want to say is, even if you're a pet dog person, learn from sport dog people. There's so much value that we can obtain from, even though we don't work in the sport. And you do Mondio ring, right? Or is that okay? There's so much value that we can learn, whether it's French ring, IGP, PSA, Mondio. Like we can gain pearls of wisdom. And just like I was saying, we all have something to learn from each other. But just because you're a pet dog trainer, don't limit your focus to other pet dog trainers.
And I think one of the biggest things that you can learn as a pet dog trainer or pet dog owner or pet dog enthusiast or whatever it is like those that, again, obviously find ones that are successful and good at it. But like one of the big things that you want to achieve as a sport dog trainer or sport dog person is you kind of want to keep the dog motivated, engaged, and functional, even under high arousal levels. And like that is a skill to train and teaches you a lot about your own handling skills, your own body movement, your own way of being able to engage your dog, and all these things translate one-on-one directly to pet dogs. It's probably a little bit easier in some ways, and a little bit harder in other ways, because not all pet dogs have this high level arousal motivation, but it doesn't change the underlying principles that are important. And the last thing you want to do with a high arousal sport dog is hammer the shit out of them, so then they're suppressed. You need them to be still like willing to do all that, right? And that's this. There, a lot of things can go wrong there, but those who know what they're doing, that's a super interesting way of like thinking about dogs and dog handling. It's not necessarily the arousal. There are other elements that you want to work on to keep a dog focused, functional, engaged, and whatnot.
Yeah, it's almost the antithesis of pet dog training with some of these dogs, that you want to be pushy, but you want to do it in a way where they have an on and off switch when you tell them that it is time to be more pushy. And then there's also, with service dog work, there's obedient disobedience, right? Where they're indicating something that you might not be aware of, and they're being insistent upon that. And we don't want to shut that down, especially if we're dealing with like epileptic alert dog, diabetic, different things like that. So, and I'm not going to show all the comments, but I'm going to show quite interesting experience. Step back dog training world and realize how much brain space was taken up by noise. It's really refreshing to hear people speak like Melanie, that push the passion of dogs to the forefront. Amen. Amen. Nerding out with this conversation. Here's one because I think that this is so important, and I want it because this is an important part of your work too, is the gut brain axis.
Mm-hmm.
And let's stay here for a second. And I know that I've read books about the gut and the importance and the tangle of neurons. So we have our brain, and the gut is also called the second brain.
Mm-hmm.
And when we took a look at the surface area, if we were to take all of our intestines and we call it the enteric nervous system, right? And there's a tangle of neurons around the heart as well, and then around the gut. But if we take a look at the surface area in the gut, we can actually call it the first brain because it's the surface area of a tennis court. If we were to spread out all of our guts, kind of gross, but
Yes.
you get what I'm saying here. Why are you delving down the importance of the gut brain axis?
It's it's such a complex topic with almost impossible to overemphasize the importance, but it's also really hard to pinpoint to exactly what's going on, because it's also, again, a function of a lot of individual factors and elements that make you and this dog or this other dog, right? But we all experience it. Like, we all know how grumpy or whatever, frustrated, depressed we get when we have a stomach ache continuously, like for a couple of days, or when we have diarrhea, or when we ate something bad, right? It kind of affects us completely. It's a very powerful, like, knocks you out kind of way of the body saying, like, you need to, like, whatever you're doing, don't do that anymore. And vice versa too. It's when we start to have like mentally, right? If we feel anxious, if we start being depressed, frustrated, worried, too sad for too long, it will affect our GI tract. We are either not hungry, we're eating too much, we're all of a sudden can't eat spicy anymore, like whatever it is. Like, it's such a strong handshaking relationship that it's so complex, and there's so many things that are involved in that it's very hard to pinpoint it. But that kind of comes from studies that have been done just to measure the impact of stress in general, like what elements in life can cause stress. And one of the factors to have a quantitatively measured way of understanding whether this impacts that animal is measuring the development of ulcers, meaning some sort of inflammation in the gut. And that can be measured microscopically. So you can take these animals and you look into their guts and you see their ulcers has been developed in response to chronic stress, for example. So that has been used kind of like the gut-brain axis has been basically leveraged to measure objectively, quantitatively, how much stress an animal can take under certain conditions. And the same, I think, applies to all creatures, in particular our dogs. And we don't often, nutrition, for example, or the right diet doesn't even have to be like, it's not a matter of kibble versus raw, but it's kind of like the right supportive diet, for example. Not being able to take the food, being picky food eater, having skin allergies and all that stuff can be traced back to diet and nutrition, which then in turn, once that is being kind of settled and optimized, can reduce anxiety, can reduce or increase motivation, can increase motivation to play indirectly, right? Because there's nothing nagging anymore that kind of causes the dog to have an overall low in terms of their motivation. Now the question is, okay, can you give us a recipe? Can you give us a script of how to know? I can't, because the gut microbiome, for example, is different with every species, with every individual. How they respond to it is different, right? You have to be willing to kind of try out different things and be able to observe the right things and be aware and conscious of what's happening with your dog given the certain circumstances. And when the dog is stressed, going to the daycare every day, going to a dog park every day, and has constantly diarrhea, it's not about the food in that case. It's not about giving more probiotics. It's about reducing the stress.
Yeah.
So it's intertwined, and you kind of look at both of those things. It's very interesting, and I think in the future, in the next 10 years, we'll have a lot more knowledge. They're really smart researchers who analyze the microbiome of subsets of dogs. I know there's some research done on working dogs and looking at their microbiome, what kind of combination of what kind of species is indicated as the healthiest gut, how can you supplement it, and all these things will happen more in the next 10 years for sure.
I think it's going to happen way sooner than that because of AI mapping these proteins.
That's true. Yeah.
300,000 protein folds mapped with AI. And something that's very interesting is we have in chemistry right hand, left hand orientation, right? And when we look at DNA, RNA, all that stuff, that is a right hand orientation. And when we look at these protein folds, that's a left hand orientation. And yeah, it's fantastic. And the thing is too, you guys, is that this can benefit you as well. And I've read plenty of books on this subject. One of the books that I recommend here, let me share my screen here, and I can share screen just so you know, and you can share screen on your side too. Allow. So we have Mind Gut Connection, Emran Mayer. You know who changed my life was Dr. Amen. Are you familiar with Dr. Amen?
I think so. It rings a bell.
Yeah, he's up here. He has a brain institute where he scans brains and omega 3s, 6s, and 9s for somebody who is ADHD. Right? Is that is very beneficial. This is one that I recommend too. Is the Brain Maker. And but it gets into some weird stuff like what they call fecal transplants, that they've actually taken poop from somebody who's healthy and put it in somebody that's not, and it's changed their life. Like it's from colitis to even some people with autistic tendencies and ADHD. Like it's mind blowing. So I don't think that we should. I think we need to evaluate biology, and as a biologist, I'm sure you would agree, when we look at the biology first instead of just training issues, that some of these problems can be fixed. And there are companies out there that are I can't remember the name of one that you could actually send your fecal sample to, and they can give you a pretty in-depth look at your particular dog and have some probiotics and different things that can help with that. So and speaking of reading, you like reading?
I mean, yeah. I think my biggest problem is the tomorrow shipment on Amazon when it comes to certain books. It's like way too fast for me to not do it all the time. I have so many. I think at this point I have more books that I haven't read yet, but bought it already because I know I'm going to read it at some point maybe. But then there's like, well, anyways, yeah, I like reading.
Do you do Kindle at all?
I don't. Well, no, that's not true. I do. I have a set on there when I travel. But I do like.
You like
it's
the
probably
physical copy?
Bad for the environment, but yeah, I do like the hard copy and like going back.
I've been addicted to the Kindle. I find that I actually read a little bit quicker through the Kindle. But one of the books that I want to thank you for, because you recommended, and don't you have a reading list that you recommend for people on?
I have it. Yeah.
Is it on your Canine Decoded site, or where is it?
Yeah, you can. It's a freebie. You can find it on my website under freebies.
Okay, so I'll put up a link to your website. So let's talk about, well, anything else that we left out about the gut brain axis before we go on to another subject. That you can think of? Anything? Are we good?
Are you asking me? Or are you
yeah.
Oh, I thought you were asking the comment section. Whoops. No, I'm good. Yeah.
And I think you can highlight a comment too. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, if there's something that you want to bring up, like we can. I don't see if you can. Like if you does it say show when you highlight over it? But if there's anything that you want me to get to, let me know right away. And then I just put a link up to Canine Coded. Hey, David. David's here. Oh, that face. Screw you, Larry. You know what I posted up? I posted up a Larry Crone is here. What's up, buddy? Good friend of mine, and he's going to be at the next IACP conference. You guys, it's going to be a great time. Fecal transplants work for dogs too? No kidding. Heather Lowell is here. This is one of my buddies, and she was supposed to be snowboarding. So thank you for joining us, Heather. This is what I love about these live streams, is that we get some of the best in the industry to join us. But anyway, I posted up a link that I'm going to be doing a live stream with you. And Larry Crone says, is there any way you can do the live stream without showing your face, Bill?
Aw.
I know. He's such a butthole. But he's just jealous of
one of my first more detailed insights into e-color work came from Larry. That's how I basically got more introduced to a little more sophisticated way of using the e-color, like Larry Crone's book and his YouTube for sure.
What did you gain from that? Right.
Oh, well, that's a good question. I think it's generally the way I have to think back. Whatever was in the book, just generally like kind of how you play with the levels, what you want to see in different contexts. You know, I think there's like some nuance to say, like, do you actually punish or not punish? Do you cue? Do you whatever it is, like whatever you're dealing with in terms of like how to introduce the econ in particular, and how you. I think if I remember correctly, the way what I liked about the book in particular, and then all the other little nuances, it drove me away from just put on the e-color and hit it on whatever level, right? But actually the thought that goes into not just habituating, not just desensitization. And I know some people don't like desensitization with e-colors and whatever, you know, there are different ways of using it, but just generally it's a language to skill that you need to give the dog the chance to learn and get fluent in. And this is not dependent on how high, well, it's dependent at the beginning, but eventually when you use it for all kinds of scenarios, it's not whether or not the dog is traumatized doesn't mean because the dog got hit on a very high level. Like I said, a lot of dogs are way more resilient than we think. Whether or not a dog gets traumatized is understanding where to put it in the context of that makes sense to the dog. And I think that's like learnings and teachings a lot of good e-collar trainers are advocating for, but it is like something that probably people don't understand if they just think they can buy, again, their e-collar off of Amazon and just put it on, and the dog has nowhere to put it.
Yeah. Well, and in preparing that dog, working levels, there's lots of nuances to working with the e-collar, momentary, constant, boosting, like all this stuff. And you know what? While we're on the subject of e-collars, there is a shaper, which I have the only prototype. I wonder where it went. But there's a shaper, ecollar.com, or ecollar is coming out with a shaper, which is, do you ever use a treat and train that spits out the food? You hit the remote?
No, I haven't used that, no.
But ecollar is coming up with the shaper, which is essentially a treat and train on steroids, where you can leave it out in the field. And I'm working on that with them to give them some things to include with that, and I can't wait for that to come out, hopefully third quarter of 2026. But yeah, I love Larry. He's one of my buddies, and he's actually one of my favorite people, even though he can be a dick sometimes. But The Comfort Crisis. So you recommended this book, and I put up a link on your website. You guys check out the freebies. You got some books. But this is something that I definitely wanted to touch on, because there were a lot of important topics covered in this Comfort Crisis. And the one thing that stands out to me, Melanie, is, remember in that book when he was talking about the TSA at all? So he's sitting there at the airport, and he's watching these TSA agents, and they're evaluating a grandma who's obviously not a terrorist, right? And they're still putting her through all the protocols. And even, he said that even if we eliminated all this crime, do you think that we would still put these protocols in place? And maybe I'm not remembering it as detailed as they talked about, but I think that what I'm getting at is that it's our human nature to increase the comfort level and do things no matter how absurd, to, I guess, stick with that protocol.
Oh
And
yeah, I think I remember now. Yeah, about context. I think what he was trying to say is kind of like something. The more comfortable we get, we still urge to make something uncomfortable, as in like seeing threats now in everything, right? Even in grandma, because we don't have a real threat. And that's just like the whole thing of tourism is like a whole different story. But like in general, like on average, right, there is not this real threat of getting eaten or like freezing to death at, in the cave or whatever. So now we manufacture almost new threats because it's almost like a given that we have to face some sort of challenges, that kind of spirals into something that is almost becoming ridiculous, right? Like grandma is not a threat, and it's really not a threat. Yeah, I think that's part of like his message that he was observing when he was traveling to these crazy adventures.
yeah, I recommend this book. It starts off with them going up to Alaska in the middle of nowhere and hunting these caribou. But then towards the end of the book, it starts getting onto different subjects and why stress and actually purposefully putting yourself into uncomfortable environments and challenging yourself. What were your biggest takeaways from that book, and why do you recommend it?
I haven't finished it. I'm a little bit 3/4 in or something.
Okay.
But something that I liked a lot, that kind of inspired me to keep reading, is when he talks about how people, getting bored with their lives or like feeling the itch and kind of, again, manufacturing some sort of like crazy adventures that could potentially get them killed. Like, you've seen this a lot, that people, they want to climb the Mount Everest and, they freeze to death or they fall. And then that's the end of it. And now that I'm also like into ultra marathon running, there are people that die too. They just run and they slip and they fall off the cliff. And, but there's something about it that makes people do that. In particular, people who have done it and overcome like something crazy, dangerous, they want to do it again more often than not. And what is that? Like, what is it that makes a certain subset of people say, I want to go to my absolute limits, out of my comfort zone. I understand that I could potentially die or at least get very badly injured, and I want to do it. And then I do it and I hate it in the moment and I can't wait to do it again. Like, that's, there must be something about it. And like the brain, there has to be a reason why it feels so rewarding, even though it's so challenging in the moment. There has to be some benefit for it. And that I would argue that a lot of, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people would feel the same if they dare to challenge themselves. And I would argue also that that's basically, for one, that's my biggest like intriguing point and take away from that book, is kind of like, none of that, like if you go out to Alaska and you freeze to death, but you kind of go for a hunt and you starve like for 3 days because your backpack is so heavy you can't possibly put more food in there, like all these things that he explains there. I think that none of these challenges, no matter what kind of reward you think you have at the end of it, like, oh, I'm gonna hunt the biggest deer or whatever, in the moment that you're really, 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 really suffering and challenging, none of these rewards will matter. Like, nothing will make them, or like, that's what I'm doing it for. Like, that works to a certain level, but at some point when you feel like you're facing death, or when you feel like you hit the pain cave or you really can't go on, none of these rewards, external rewards, will be enticing enough to say it's worth it. You kind of just do it because you have to in that moment. And I think, not that, again, I'm saying this not to say that our dogs need to go through this kind of challenge, but I think everyone should have at least once this experience to understand the benefits of working through challenge without a reward dangling in front of their noses, or without the reward happening right after. There is something inherently in overcoming challenge that doesn't need external rewards. And that's my biggest message whenever I talk about stress inoculation. And very loud voices again in the R plus community say, like, I can achieve the same thing with rewards. I can achieve the same recall with rewards. Let's just assume you can. That's not the point, though. The point is, if all rewards go away, is your dog capable of withholding discomfort, not crumbling, and coming out stronger on the other end? And I would argue that most people and most dogs can't, unless they have experienced that they can. And you have to give a dog a chance to learn that they can. And I think all people that have some tendency of like dissatisfaction, or like feeling stuck in their 9 to 5, overcoming a big challenge will show them that they can do hard things without the reward necessarily. So I'm going down this rabbit hole here, but I think this is very, very important. And I really recommend like everyone to like ask themselves, well, this is the last time I did something hard. Like I did something that really pushed me, not just a little bit, but really far outside my comfort zone. And if it's been a long time since that happened, or it never happened in a structured way, like we're not talking about actual abuse or like some traumatic accident or whatever, but something that you have a little bit of control over setting it up, I would argue everyone should do it, because that will change how you think about stress, and it will make you appreciate stress and discomfort, even pain, a little bit more.
I think it will change the way that you view yourself and your relationship and your dog. And you know what? I think we sell these dogs short, dude.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't emphasize that. Like, these dogs are capable of so much more than we think so, especially in today's modern society. And I think that the what I took away from this book is that we're soft, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, literally, we're soft. Like, my stomach, my back, because of all these cushy chairs that we have, because of DoorDash, and because of all these restaurants and grocery stores, and because of climate control that I just push a button, 2 degrees. It's 2 degrees too warm for me right now, Melanie.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta go push a button, and then I'm soft. Where there is this concept in that book that's called misogi, or misogi,
Mm-hmm.
where you set up purposefully a mission for yourself to where it comes from an old Japanese idea, and it's about doing something extremely difficult once a year. And the point is not achievement. The point is pushing past mental walls we create for ourselves. And so these are the rules of misogi. It's spelled MISOGY. So one is that you have to have a 50% chance of failure.
Like, who likes that, these odds, right? Like, oh no, hell no.
2, it must be simple, like running an ultramarathon. Like, it's not easy, but it's simple. We're just running down this path, right, until either we give out or we finish it. But there must be a 50% chance of failure. 3, I love this one because of social media. Misogi must be done mostly in private. So this isn't about showing the world how great or how strong, whatever you are. This is about showing you your capabilities and where that boundary lies that you have to push through. And it is essentially helps you discover how capable you are. And that's why I say it's going to change you as a person. And do you know what? This book inspired me towards the end of the book. I don't know if you're there yet, but rucksack. So there's a rucksack that you put on.
Oh yeah.
Yep. And so I got a rucksack, and I got
Nice.
all the weights. And at first I'm like, dude, I'm going to do, 30 pound, whatever. I'm on 10 pounds.
It's hard. It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah. But that's the point, is it's
It's so
hard,
true.
and putting yourself into situations where you have a 50% chance of failure and it's hard and you're going to want to give up. That's where the strength lies, in that struggle, as I was talking about earlier. And if
Mhm.
you can put yourself through this and see, how sometimes we look back at our past selves from somebody that we've become, and it's not that we're judging or anything, but we appreciate the growth that we've achieved during the struggle that we've been through. I think that when you get to the other side of this, you can see the importance of maintaining course and getting
Mhm.
through that, right?
Yeah, I think one of the things he says, like, today's comfort becomes tomorrow's discomfort. So you kind of have to put effort into not falling into that routine. And like, I mean, you're so right. Like my husband and I, we constantly go back between 65 and 66. I'm like, that's too cold. I'm going to put it up 1 degree, like 1 degree. And out of a sudden, everything changed. But then I'm too hot. I'm going back to 65. Like, think of like how ridiculous this is, right? But it's becoming a normal conversation that we have. And I do have to say that a lot of things growing up in East Germany in particular, I didn't grow up like so cushioned in terms of like what was available. And there was no AC and whatever. These are like little things, but in general, like the whole mentality wise, I think everyone that changes over the years, right? Everyone basically now at our age will say, "Oh, I didn't grow up that way. We had less, and it was okay." But now it's not okay anymore. Like I would not want to have that. I had that. Like this is no good. And I'm like just like that, but. Putting yourself to like some sort of challenges, like you said so nicely, it's not about the achievement, it's about not giving up. And I think it's so easy to give up nowadays because this because we live in such a comforted society most of the time, and we apply that one-on-one to our dogs. And man, our dogs, if given the chance, they will outrun you, they will outstarve you, they will out discomfort you because they're okay with that a lot more than we think they are. And they will probably prefer that if that means it widens their horizon in terms of like the enrichment that they get, the freedom that they get, the experiences that they get, what they get to see of this world. And if we make it so small because we're trying to keep it so comfortable, the brain shrinks, right? They die earlier, they get sick faster. And we have, just like as we have with our own society, an epidemic of obese, diabetic, arthritis-ridden dogs that could probably live 5 years longer. But somehow we don't want to see that when we talk about removing stress under all conditions.
Yeah, we see it in people too. I mean, obese, diabetic, and even when they were talking about the rucksack, what got me was like I've had back problems, and they did the statistics of surgery for the back problem versus exercise, or surgery or pharmaceutical intervention for heart problems versus exercise. And guess what always wins?
Always exercise.
Always exercise, always being uncomfortable. It makes you healthier, it makes you stronger. And so it's important to purposely do this. I want to go through some of these because I wrote down a bunch of these questions. Oh, sleep. Let's talk about sleep. Sleep is rarely talked about in the dog world. How much sleep do dogs actually need at different life stages? And behavioral signs that we're missing when a dog is chronically underslept, or like you said, like their life is boring and they don't have the enrichment of actually venturing out in the world. What do you think of sleep?
So sleep is an interesting topic because you can look at it from a learning perspective. Sleep is necessary to learn whatever you're teaching the dog. When you go into obedience, board train, or whatever, there has to be some sort of long term as in like at night rest for better learning. There has to be So dogs, they sleep the way we do in terms of the phases, but shorter, and dogs have what we don't usually do. They have like these half nappy naps. They don't fully asleep, but they kind of rest and nap, but they can get up and continue like any second, right? But they usually do throughout the day. It's a little bit deeper and longer in terms of the going through REM and whatnot when
I don't know
when
if
they
you can
go
see
to
back here. Let me show you.
sleeping now, napping.
Oh,
Oh, there we
no.
go.
As soon as I move, he's awake.
Yeah, of course. And like both of like all of these well, the dogs want to sleep, they matter. And the
Low
best
power
way to
mode.
describe it is, yes, exactly, the best way to describe sleep deprived will affect their learning capabilities just like it does for us, which is most of the time the most important thing, because will also affect their impulsivity. So they will become a little bit more reactive rather than strategic thinking about what we ask them. A dog that is in the shelter and has, constant action going on at night because dogs are barking during the day because people come in and out. Then you have a shelter program wanting to make them more adaptable by teaching them sit and stay and stuff is very counterproductive. It doesn't help them. It puts a lot of frustration and stress on them, in addition to them already not being at their best in learning. There are other ways to, help them through this, but these kind of things are important for sleep. And the best way to guarantee that is, especially if you have a house with other dogs and other kids and whatnot, to have a space for them that is only theirs, right? Where they know that there's no kid crawling into their crate or another dog occupying the crate, or, you as the owner fucking with that. I think there has to be the respect for this is your space and only yours.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you have to go in there. Sometimes you're free to go in there when you need your space, and that sometimes is missing, I feel, because we can always feel like we have primary access to everything, but no, there's sometimes the dogs, it's theirs, and you shouldn't mess with that.
Yeah, an encapsulated space of safety that the dog can retreat to when overwhelmed, tired. And that's the first thing with my pet dog people is like, when this dog's in this crate, the dog's invisible, kids. This dog, do not mess with that dog. Just like if you go to your room and your brother keeps on coming in there and taking your stuff, messing with you, like it's important. And I think also when we do training with the dogs, like the neural regrowth pattern that happens primarily in sleep too. Like that's the subconscious mind comes alive, and I'm interested in the subconscious. Like when I see dogs dreaming and stuff like that, I'm like, what's going on? Because dreaming for us, like dreams are crazy for me.
Yeah.
I had a dream that I overslept our meeting like last night. Like, isn't it crazy how? And then even I couldn't sleep last night, so I'm a little sleep deprived. And I took melatonin, as I was talking about, and of course the tryptophan from the bird yesterday. Thanksgiving was yesterday for people watching this in the future. And I'm feeling much better now. But when I first started this, I'm like, Melanie, I'm in a fog. But but that's important. Like when I do a training lesson, especially when we're having a good time and the dog has achieved and we're ending on a good moment, I'll put the dog in the crate, and we actually call this soak time, where we let the information soak in and let the brain rebuild itself and kind of ponder and contemplate on what we just did in a space that is free of distractions. And even before I start training, I'll put the dog in the crate. And so now the dog has gone from a place that has not much stimulus, and then we'll go out, do the training, and I'll put them back in the crate or in their space that they can soak or reflect on the activities that we just did.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So breed specific. So breed specific behavior, although it can be controversial, which I don't think, because we were talking about earlier about the the behavior, hormones, genetics, like even as a breed specific or a dog that's a particular breed, which is the genetics aspect, that we still have the behavior and the hormonal, and even a dog can be different, even though they're same breed, same litter, we can still have dogs that are different in that particular litter. From your genetics and neuroscience background, how much do you think is hardwired versus that can be shaped by early environment and management?
So I think it's hard to answer because again, there is for behavior in particular, there is no genetic expression without the influence of the environment. Meaning, like, yes, the dog. Sorry, I guess I moved my microphone away from me, which is very smart. For behavior to be expressed, it obviously has to be triggered by the environment to be a reason for that behavior to show up. So it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens always with the interaction with the environment. So it's very hard to then, and it's not just how we handle dogs, it's literally the environment, everything around the dog. So you can't really take one over without acknowledging the other. There are certain genetic predispositions to be more neurotic or more prone to anxiety because your stress response has been influenced genetically, or a little bit more threshold for pain, which might make you more aggressive. But usually it's not just one gene, but more likely a combination of genes that determine the behavior that, given a certain threshold that is experienced in the environment, will trigger that behavior. Now, there are some exceptions in terms of known predatory sequences, for example, that where you can very clearly say this is genetics. And a border collie is what I mean. A border collie wouldn't stalk unless there's something to stalk. So there is the influence of the environment, and however, the expression of it is very genetically driven. You don't see any other dog stalking the way border collies stalk, right? You don't see any other dog biting away a certain breed of the Malinois bite once given the opportunity. The things that we usually are more interested in as non-sport people, like anxiety, fear, aggression, much harder to say this is genetics. Huge component of environment plays a role, and by that also the exposure and the experience during adolescence, and then later on generally the training. There's no such a thing that, like, well, again, we know that some breeds, for example, are more aggressive than others, but it's more like the range that we're talking about rather than very aggressive versus not aggressive, right? And within that range, determined by how the threshold for the expression of that behavior is determined, which again is influenced by all the experiences throughout the dog's life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we got to look at the dog, what they're hardwired in, and in the environment. And that's what and then the handler as well. We got to look at the relationship, and acknowledging and moving forward with this dog's certain characteristics in an environment that speaks to those intrinsic desires that this dog has, right? And just like you're saying, like a collie wouldn't stalk unless there's something to stalk. Like in my mind, I'm just thinking about a collie stalking something that's not there, and I'm like, whoa, this dog's not.
That would be time to think about the medication.
But then there's also, like, when the dog is stalking, we have to, as a handler and as the observer here, we have to look at the environment. And a lot of times too, like there might be a shadow on the wall, or there might be a reflection that we don't see or might not be totally obvious to us. But instead of anthropomorphizing this dog, we essentially become the dog by proxy, try to see through the world through the dog's eyes and be like, oh, there's a shadow right there. Knock it off. No, or whatever, but realizing, oh, okay, this isn't out of nowhere. This is a function of the environment that the dog is in right now.
Right.
And transmutation of the intrinsic desire that this dog has baked into them, manifesting in that stalking, or sometimes the alarm barking or something like that. Like, and sometimes my dog's a bark and I'm like, oh, okay, there's a delivery driver here.
Mm-hmm.
Knock it off. But acknowledging like the environment does play an important role, and to not just discount that, but to try to see the environment through the dog's perspective.
Right.
Okay. Let me see. So talking about resilience. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I get a lot of too, is, as a pet dog owner too. And I think that it's very important that you are a woman, because a lot of my clients, most of my clients, 85% of my clients, I sat down and did the numbers, everything, are women in my pet dog training business. And a lot of owners feel guilty about past mistakes. From a neuroplasticity standpoint, how forgiving is the canine brain? And what's the timeline for seeing real change when we start doing things right?
What kind of mistakes are we talking about?
I think just not structure, right? That's what I see, or mislabeling, or I mean, there's two parts to this. One, not listening to the dog. Like a lot of times when I come into a situation, like for the guy, I'm like, all right, the dog's got it, dude, chill out, right? And for the girl, I'm like, come on, like me, I want you to be like, I know you're nurturing, and I love this nurturing aspect of you, but I need a more assertive part of you to take the wheel here. And so good question, right? There's the past mistakes of setting up a dog in a situation where they're way overwhelmed. We went way beyond that threshold, and now we're dealing with the kind of fallout from behavior that the dog's exhibiting. But I think when I wrote this question, it was more about, like, they just feel guilty about making these changes. They feel that their dog is sad. They feel that their dog is like, and I'm like, no, this dog is not sad. This dog needs this. And like the dog, when you start putting in the structure, the boundaries, and the clear communication, is this making sense at all to you?
I think so. Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
And start to do things right. Like I can see with me, the dog changing pretty quickly because they've never experienced the experience of the relationship with me. And then when I bring the dog back home, there's a little bit of, there's a timeline that's different when the dog has come to me than when I bring them back home, because of the experiences that they've had prior with this, with the owner.
Yeah, there is a mass of reinforcement, like, given that the behavior in one way or another was reinforcing to the dog. There's a mass of reinforcement behind it, which makes these circuits that fire when triggered very strong. So meaning anything, but usually you want to change behavior that you don't like anymore. But if the dog has rehearsed that behavior, a lot of cues in the environment, that could be the presence of the owner per se. It could be just being at home. It could be all the sounds around the neighborhood. Anything that has triggered a certain behavior and has led the dog to exhibit that behavior multiple times will strengthen these circuitry in the brain. That's just like, okay, this works, or this is good, this feels nice. That's what we do. And changing that, when you say at the beginning, a thing like pulling out the magic wand and now all of a sudden it makes sense to our dogs to not do that anymore, goes against all learning principles. And we forget that we have a hard time ourselves to change habits that out of the sudden are not welcome anymore. So you kind of have to acknowledge, for one, that you're like in the process of changing something that isn't just a black or white answer. The dog has to create new connections. And unless it's a super young dog, let's just say 99% of the time, we're not making, or the dog isn't making new nuance and saying, oh, now I'm making something new. It's changing old connections and layering over new connections, that you have to break up old connections, basically, in like very simple terms. And that's a lot of work that the brain is very resistant that way. Why? For the brain, who doesn't understand social norms and doesn't understand that some things just don't fit into society. For the brain, it's like, why would I change? You have to convince me. There have to be consistent inputs to the brain to make sense to change old behaviors because it has worked up until then. And that's a very expensive, time-consuming, energy-consuming process. So we had to have the empathy with our dogs to say like, hey, do this instead, do this instead, do this instead, and do it again, and do it again, and do it again. And then sometimes this is where, for example, layering in sometimes punishment or negative reinforcement or whatever, sometimes we have to compete with the urge to go back to the old behavior and say, well, now I have to also make this a little bit more unpleasant so that we can create room for these new connections. And sometimes you don't have to do that because the dog says, oh, okay, I didn't really was invested in that old behavior anyways. But sometimes the dog is really invested in the old behavior. And it's like, well, I can do this, but I also want to do this. I can do this, but I also want to do this. And there will be a point where you're like, okay, now you really cannot do that anymore. And this is what we have worked and talked about for quite some time now. And the time frame for that, there's no way of like, depends on how complex, it depends on how complex the new behavior is versus the old behavior. It depends on how, if you're actually working against the dog's internally reinforcing instinctive behavior, like counter surfing is much easier to stop than prey drive, for example, because prey drive comes in like an internal reinforcement that no owner, no matter how good you are with play or whatever, you will have a hard time competing with. That depends on the temperament of the dog, and depends how old the dog is, and depends on how long the dog has rehearsed that behavior. If the dog is fairly old, has rehearsed this for years and years and years, is kind of like a magician in stalking squirrels, and you have no invested play behavior or any other form of engagement outside, you're going to have a very hard time changing that. If it's a young dog that, try to catch a squirrel once and is 6 months old, and you're like, oh, I cannot let this happen, and you get professional help, you have a very good chance that you can have the stockiest prey driving dog you want. You have a good chance of not having the problem of squirrel chasing.
Well, we use the squirrel as a part of the training, right? And show the dog that once it shows up, it's not only off limits, but it's your cue to pay attention to me, or like right. There's certain aspects that we can structure that environment. And then when the behavior becomes a reward itself, I mean, that's the dog reinforcing, and with the squirrel chasing, that's something that is a desire for particular dogs that is like the pinnacle of their experience, right? And especially once they've achieved it and eaten it, right? I had a dog that they were telling me, oh yeah, he's gotten like 10 rabbits, and I'm like, uh-oh.
Well, that ship has sailed now.
Yeah, I'm like, well, let's work on something else, but they were worried about the cat, because now he's starting to transition to, transition that stalking behavior to the cat that they dearly love. And I'm like, well, a cat's not a rabbit. The cat is not a rabbit. And so we have to show the dog that this cat sometimes will move where it could be mistaken as a rabbit, but they're not in the same environment. And this is because the dog's inside. The dog sometimes sees the cat outside, but we have to show the dog to differentiate the different smells, the different movements, the different energy that this cat has versus this rabbit. And we were able to fix that, where the dog is perfectly fine with the cat running around doing anything that it was, because once we've taught him to differentiate that, then we use the cat to reinforce that the dog's doing the right thing by ignoring it. Right? And then the counter surfing is not intrinsic, it's environmental operant. So now the dog walks in here and be like, oh man, there's a plate of cheese, right, which I call dog money, and there's $20,000 on the counter. What happens if I jump up here? Boom, it just got paid for that. And now we have to use that as well. So then I'll set up a sting operation or whatever to show the dog that that's not always going to be the case, that you're going to get paid for this without consequences.
Correct.
Right. So we have, we've been talking for a little bit. So let me go back to these comments. And I want to also talk about, you have courses available for people. And you guys, if you like what I do too, I have, and I hate self-promoting, but I have a Patreon page, Bow Wow Bills. I'll put a link to that, patreon.com. Or I'll put there's a banner here that I can, right there, patreon.com/Bow Wow Bills. I have some interviews that are there, some times that I've worked with some dogs. I've started working with the dog service dog that I delivered. I need to make a couple more videos on that. But if you guys like what I do, please consider supporting me for as little as $5 a month. And I appreciate all of you that do support me on there. So let's see. Wow, we got people all over the world. That's why I love doing these. I'm not a Mali person. I am not a Mali person, just so you know. But I make an exception for a Loup de Soleil pup.
Yeah, that's the breed line that Michael Ellis has that I got my dog from. Loup de Soleil is like the line of Malinois that I have who are like special, I think, in specific ways. Sensitive, emotionally very, very sensitive, but obviously beasts and drive.
All right, so we have a question. Question for when you're ready for it. Do you think that it's okay to use these tools on every dog, or are there some dogs that we shouldn't use tools on?
I think they're dogs where you don't have to use tools on. I think they're like the way we often think about is the more fearful, the more anxious a dog is, the less likely they will be okay using these tools. That's often the context. But I disagree with that. I think it's a matter of how you introduce it and a matter of how careful you construct your training, making sure to be very knowledgeable to avoid the fallouts, right? But I think just like we talked about the discomfort crisis, I think there's something very valuable for an anxious dog to overcome challenges, discomfort. I'm not talking about hiding a treat and finding that treat. I'm talking about actually not wanting to leash pressure, not wanting to give into leash pressure, feeling the prong collar, giving in, and it goes away. There's something about overcoming challenges, working through mistakes, maybe feeling a punishment through the e-collar or whatever, and then being encouraged to continue trying. And you don't start with the anxious dog necessarily, and you don't go fast with an anxious dog necessarily, but nevertheless, that is in my experience and what hear from other trainers who have a very thoughtful approach to that, some of the best ways, stress inoculation to help anxious and fearful dog to be more confident. Other dogs where I wouldn't use it on, like I don't use it on Harvey, my pet dog. He doesn't need to. He's not obedient. He lost all his obedience because he's just so perfect. He doesn't get into trouble. He doesn't need to. Like,
yeah, easy dog.
He's a super easy dog, and like, why would I have to like use an e-collar or a prong collar on him? He knows how to walk, and he's also very sensitive, so he would take it the wrong way for sure. If I had to, I can, right? Then I would just train it differently. It's not like he would crumble or anything. So, and then most of the time, though, I got to say that there is no harm in expecting that you have to use it. Meaning, if you expect you have to use it, you take your time introducing it long before you have to, especially if you get a new dog, because you never know necessarily. You don't know until they're 6 months or 1 year old who they really are. And having then habituated some stuff, maybe slowly introduce some leash pressure, you will have a much better chance to avoid other unwanted things if you're hesitant. And then later on you're like, I still don't know if I should or should not. Ollie is 9 months, 8.5 months, and he's starting to wear the e-collar. I'm not going to introduce it or use it until he's a 1 year old because I don't need to, but he will have worn it for that time so that when I have to or when I want to start doing it, I can just jump in. And it's just me planning ahead. I mean, I know that I'm going to have to use it on him, but for his training in general. But like, I think there's something to be said about just going in prepared. And then if you don't have to use it because you get a Harvey like my dog, even better. You don't have to.
Bonus push button dogs. And we have to remember too, as professionals, we don't get a lot of those dogs because they don't need it. Like, this dog is perfect. Like, and I love dogs like that. I've had a couple of those where I'm just like, dude, you're amazing. I love you. And the tools, I mean, this guy behind me, this Alder, my skipper key here. Let me. Whoops. So this is Alder.
Oh,
And guess who wears an e-collar when we're out hiking or anything? Because he sees it, he's got forward thinking, and so dude, he'll just take off.
he's got forward thinking.
Yeah, like he's just like what's out there in the world. But as long as he's wearing this thing, man, he's right there with me, and I let him explore, do his own thing. But I like the fact that I have this collar. It allows me more effective communication, very precise timing, and it's important that if you don't know what you're doing, and especially with fearful or anxious dogs, that you work with a professional that has a proven track record of working with these dogs, because a lot of ways that we use these tools might be counterintuitive to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you said with the stress inoculation, some of this stuff is counterintuitive and might not feel good when you use it, because the dog has to work through the problem. But once we get to that other side of the problem, the dog's like, oh, I got it. And we're like, okay, yes, you do. Good job, buddy. So yeah, but not every dog needs a tool like that. And my goal is to get dogs to a point where they don't need any tools, but it's great to have them. Just like I don't even know where it's right here. I don't need this thing, but I'm so happy I have it, because it allows me a much fulfilling existence with communication and like news and all the games and stuff that I play. So there's ways that is the tools can be super, super beneficial, even with dogs that are just using it for communication in the real world. All right, let me see. The concept of proper use tends to vary. So that means that the line on abuse will vary. Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing is too is we belong to an industry where we have a lot of what I call wobbly terms. Mm-hmm. What this means to you might mean something completely different to me, and so that's why it's important to get clear definitions. And when I told a lady that this dog needs to be frustrated, and she was like, "Why would I ever want to frustrate my dog?" And I asked Jay Jack. Did you get to meet Jay?
I didn't meet him in person, but yeah, I didn't get it. He was
awesome.
in and out. Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite people too, just like Larry. And he gave me a tip about ask this lady what frustration means to her. Tell her that she's a director of a movie that requires a scene where somebody is frustrated. What's this scene look like? And that was so helpful to me, because when I asked her that, I was like, what does this scene look like? Frustration, because obviously what I'm talking about might be different from what you're talking about. So that gave me a good insight to get into her brain.
Yeah.
And she was talking about hiding in the closet, dialing 911 because there's a serial killer or something. And I was just like, that is not what I'm talking about.
Oh, that's not frustration. That's like, that's terrible.
Yeah.
I'm frustrated that my killer is in my house. Like, well, good for you if there's only frustration. Go beat him up.
Yeah, go beat him up, frustrated. And I'm like, no, I'm talking about handing you a Rubik's Cube that's unsolved that you can get through. Like but it's important because some people are extreme with their thoughts. Some people are extreme with how they view the world. And that gave me a good insight into who she was. We have Quebec, UK, Switzerland. What is this, Carl? Is this in Germany?
Ooh, hotel lobby. Oh, that's funny.
In the hotel lobby with the mustache. Look at that mustache. That's where I'm going with my mustache. We got Ireland. What's up, Finn? Utah, Canada. Thank you, you guys. This is for listening and joining us. I like listening to her. Melanie is science-based behavior expert who speaks common sense.
Trying.
I can feel my PhD advisor full body cringing at the thought of some company selling kits to determine dog enterotypes.
Enterotypes.
What's an enterotypes?
Enterotypes, kind of like the well, I guess that's what she is talking to. Either like the type of cells that line the gut.
Oh, the gut biome type of stuff.
The gut lining, enterotypes or the cells, or like the type of bacteria as well that kind of interact with the gut lining. And the different types for all of those things, different things that people probably now kind of make a big deal out of, what type is it? It's almost like a personality test then.
Yeah. I know that I'm outgoing. My wife, I mean, like I'm an outrovert, like on the one of the highest extremes, and then my wife's an introvert. So we complement each other. And by the way, you guys, IK9 is viewing this on YouTube. Facebook has switched it where they're deleting these live streams, and I have hundreds of these live streams with trainers from all throughout the world on my YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe and check out my YouTube, and I'll be converting all of these to Spotify as well. I'm working on that. Can you talk about how structure a fitness training plan for cardio, strength, and recovery?
Oh, well, that depends on the dog. It's a mix of, there's certain strength exercises you can do. There's endurance that you can do, but like the way you would set it up really depends on the current fitness level of the dog. Just like with humans, right? You want to have some endurance. Depending on the dog, though, like for most dogs, let's just say, endurance means coming into like trotting, because that is the most energy efficient, balanced way of moving forward. If you have a greyhound, that's, for example, different because and even for German Shepherds, because their anatomy is a little bit different. For greyhounds, the most efficient way would be actually galloping or sprinting, because the way their back is structured. But that would be the endurance part. The strength part is you're gonna need equipment for that, but like I like the functional strength that will allow them to either perform their tasks better, balance them if they're sport dogs, or if they're just pet dogs, to kind of age gracefully. A lot of times, most dogs have a weak core that then puts a lot of pressure on their spine, and need some shoulder strength too, because dogs are putting 80% of their weight on their forelimbs. So then it gets, and then that also means that anything around the knee, the abductors, the adductors, should be strengthened, in particular to protect the knee, because it's weakened there more so. So that's for the strength, and finding kind of like a way to integrate that. A walk around the block, I don't count as fitness program. I don't think it's enough for most dogs. The best way to integrate all of it without having to set up anything else would be like good hikes, right? Where the dog has to get over different surfaces. You can use tree logs for jumping surfaces or for jumping exercises. That would be kind of like the ideal, because then they get all other enrichment as well, and all sensory inputs are being tickled and satisfied. But not everyone has access to really good hiking trails, especially if they can't go off leash. So you might want to have to set it up at home, buy equipment, and plan a little bit for that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of venturing, going to different places with your dog. I mean, the dog is a migratory pack animal, so they do that. And when we're joining them in a place, bringing them back home, I think that is also a bonding exercise of just staying of a unit, a familial unit at home, out here, coming back, going. And so that's something that is also very enriching as well. Do you know do you know Dr. Robbie Iyer, the guy that does the Atlas, this stuff?
No, I do not.
Yeah, here. It is joint support. So canine joint muscle total wellness supplement. And he's won the product of the year 2025, I believe 2024. And I'll put up a link, you guys. I love him. I absolutely love his products. And they have it for people as well. And then they also have these little joint. This is for the dog, where it's kind of like, it's Ayurvedic medicine, right? And so this one has the tip that you can get into the joints of the dog and apply that. It's like a Bengay or whatever. And then he also has these bands that you put coins in to help strengthen those muscles. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll put up. I've got to remember to put up a point or a link there. hello from Australia. Okay, barks at the back doors 9 out of 10, but tell him good boy. A calm dog is a relaxed dog. Looks to people, they only know chaotic, frantic dogs. I don't know where in the world we got that the manic, crazy dog is a happy dog instead of a manic, crazy dog. It's like astrology for bacteria. I like this, Jessica Sutter. I like you, Jessica. It's like astrology for bacteria. That's hilarious.
It's true.
Did you meet Nelson at the ICP? Nelson Hodges?
I don't know. Did I?
I don't know. He's one of the OGs, and he's got a wonderful. He'll be at the next one. I'll make sure that I introduce you. But you need to know Nelson. He's a wonderful guy. So that's all the comments, you guys. I'm getting to. But you have a course, Melanie. I want to promote what you're doing.
Yeah, I do. I have a bunch of things, and there's something new coming this year too. No, next year. My biggest course is Triple Helix, and some of you, I think, have taken it that are here. It runs 2 or 3 times a year, so it's currently actually closed, but it will come back in April. And it's basically all the things that we discussed today, but in the context of genetics, the behavior itself, ethology, if you will, like the species dog and its optimal, expression, and our influence as handlers and trainers. And it is very nerdy. It's very science driven, and it's all about, creating nuances in your training plan rather than teaching you this is how you train, sit, stand down, whatever. I don't do that. But like whatever training plan you're having or whatever you're doing, it's not so much about being a trainer, but just really enthusiastic and wanting to understand the dog better. It's a 3-week long course. We meet 3 times a week, and then there's there's an option to complete a test and get a certificate for applied science for dog training, for dog trainers. So again, this is in April, but there will be something probably earlier than that coming out. That will be more targeted for resilience, stress inoculation. So the discomfort that we talked about in the context of training, meaning the role of punishment, the role of negative reinforcement, stress inoculation per se, the science behind stress, and then all the little things that you can do throughout the dog's life to make the dog more resilient in the context also of nutrition and exercise. So there will be something new coming out probably in February or March. And then I have smaller ones that you can find on my website. They're like mini courses for just digging deeper into stuff.
Yeah, the mini programs that you have right here. And I put up a link to your website in the comments down below. And I hear your dogs are ready for you to get off the screen here.
Yeah, that's Ollie. He's well, I think my husband just came home, so.
Oh, okay.
Like, hello, hello, Dad.
I really enjoyed this conversation, Dr. Melanie. Thank you so much for your time. And
my pleasure.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing what you talk about in August in Newport Beach. And
yes, for sure. That'll be good.
We'll say goodbye to everybody here, and then I'll say goodbye to you in the studio. So
sounds good.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
See you on Facebook.
Yeah.
In the comments.
I'll be eating the popcorn.
Yes.
Watching the comments, All right. Thank you.